The final boss, Bowser, Ganondorf, Robotnik, the camera from Super Mario 6. The final boss is a legendary title to hold. One last challenge a video game throws at the player before it admits defeat. And here we are, standing at the end of our KSP playthrough with one final mission to go. KSP doesn't have a story or enemies really, but I believe it does have what could be considered a final boss, Eve. The most difficult solid celestial body to take off from in the entire game, taking almost twice as much deltaV to reach orbit compared with Kerbin. And unlike Kerbin, you also need to launch a vessel that can get your enormous Eve lander from Kerbin to the surface of Eve in the first place, and have it survive the punishingly treacherous Eve atmospheric entry. Sure, there are harder challenges like Duel 5 or Grand Tour, but I consider these to be arbitrary missions, whereas Eve Return is just a simple go to a place, land there, and come back. And so that's why I consider it the final boss of Kerbal's space program, and that's why it's going to be the final mission before tech tree completion that we do in Lowne Aerospace III, the third one. So we begin our build with the hardest part, the Eve Ascent vehicle. Since every landing, bar our Minmus mission, saw both Bob Kerman and Jebediah Kerman go down to the planetary surface, it only seemed right that the Eve lander should be two-seater. I've built two-seat Eve landers before, but I often go with the Mark I size cockpit and stack one on top of the other, so this time I thought I'd experiment with the Gemini-style cockpit and fuel tanks that come with the Making History DLC. It's basically the size in between the Mark I size and the 2.5 meter size that we've been using in this playthrough so far. The upper stage is powered by a high efficiency but relatively low thrust Cheetah engine, while the first stage is going to need considerably more power. I wanted this lander to be a do-it-all Eve lander, which means it should be able to reach Eve orbit when starting at Eve sea level, a scenario that we're probably not going to need to contend with here. But if you're a channel member or a Patreon supporter, then you'll be able to download this craft file and use it for yourself. And so I wanted this to be able to return from anywhere on Eve. Except the sea itself. I mean, I haven't actually tested water landings, but I'm 100% certain that attempting to land this thing in water, or whatever comprises Eve's oceans, will cause it to fall over. Anyway, the first stage is powered by 2 vector engines bolstered by 6 surrounding aerospike stacks, which feed into the core via asparagus staging, meaning that only 2 of the 6 are consuming fuel at any one time, supplying the entire craft with fuel so that when they stage, the rocket remains at full fuel capacity. This is the most efficient way to design a rocket like this, and rather than using fuel lines, I used the fuel flow priority setting. It can only be accessed if you enable advanced tweakables in the difficulty settings, and the way it works is that each tank is assigned a number. The lower the number, the lower in the chain that tank is. So for example, if you have 4 tanks, then tanks with fuel priority value 4 will drain first, then those with value 3, then 2, then 1, then 0, if that makes sense. So yeah, very powerful first stage because Eve has very high gravity, 1.7 G, and a much thicker atmosphere than Kerbin, and high atmospheric pressure as well. A lot of engines don't even work at Eve sea level, which is why I'm using very well optimized sea level engines. But as you can see, the lander itself is basically done. I added a little rover to the side as well that we can deploy, but while we're talking about optimization, you might have spotted that all the non-flight essential components like the ladders, landing gear, and science modules are all attached via decoupler, so that we can ditch them upon Eve liftoff, giving us the best possible chance at reaching orbit. I have 2 pairs of science juniors as well, so that we can run science experiments during descent in the higher atmosphere and experiments in the lower atmosphere as well. We need 2 science juniors and goo units because during hypersonic entry, we can't have Bob Kerman go on EVA to restore them. I mentioned that another benefit to having 2 is redundancy, because above the command module and the science pods are 4 large inflatable heat shields, or at least there will be momentarily. First of all, I'm adding a heat shield at the bottom of the lander. This, if you could believe it, is to protect the lander from the deadly heat of Eve atmospheric entry. However, we do need heat shields at the top to create lots of drag up there, and again, make sure that this thing remains base first during Eve atmospheric entry. I started adding this little kind of decoupler at the top just here. I ended up ditching this because I realized we don't need 5 heat shields, right? We only need the 4. So here I am adding the surrounding 4. We'll delete that central one. There we go, in just a second. And there we are. Now, at the moment, things aren't ideal with those heat shields because we're going to need to detach them once they've served their purpose and we are under controlled parachute descent. doing so can cause glitchiness, and sometimes they can swipe the lander and cause things to break. So the way I decided to change things up and mitigate against this is, as you can see, I've attached them to some pistons, which will extend to get them as far away from the vehicle as possible, and I've made the connection to the pistons very weak, so hopefully aerodynamic/Kraken forces will cause them to be ripped away harmlessly. The connection is weak because I used a very thin piston. The connection will only become weak when I want it to, though. Prior to extension, the shield will be anchored in place with struts. But there we are. I think we can call the lander done, so now it's time to design the ship that will get it to Eve from Kerbin. First up, this is the interplanetary transfer stage, featuring a cozy Apollo-style command pod for Jeb, Bill and Bob to live aboard, and then it'll have a bucket load of liquid fuel for its high-efficiency nuclear engines. It'll need a lot of deltaV to push the heavy lander across interplanetary space to Eve, capturing via engine burn rather than aerobraking, as aero capture at Eve can often end very deadly-y. That's a word, right? After the Eve landing is done, I then want to head on out to its moon Gilly and gather some science from there, and without being weighed down by the Eve lander, this thing will be more than capable of doing the Gilly landing itself, and there's no need for landing gear either. Gilly's gravity is so weak that we can safely just rest on the engine bells. Now, at the moment, this thing won't be very safe during an ascent from Kerbin if there is an anomaly aboard the vehicle and we need to do a launch abort, because there's no launch abort system, because the crew compartment is in the middle of the stack. So I added this little thing at the top. You'll see it kind of come together in just a second. Here we are. I'm adding a little kind of command vehicle that Jeb, Bob and Bill will sit in during Kerbin ascent, so that if we need to do an abort, they can just, be pulled away by that launch escape tower and be fine. And it has a probe core on board, so that if we get to space safely, which, spoiler alert, we make it to space okay, we can get rid of it and it can just deorbit itself under probe control. I know it's not needed in Kerbal Space Program because you can just press revert to launch or revert to vehicle assembly building or whatever, but what can I say? We look after our astronauts here at Lowne Aerospace III, the third one. There we are. And then for the rest of the rocket, just a big dumb booster, really. 2 massive shuttle-style, SLS-style SRBs flanking an enormous 5-meter fuselage. And then I sort of got a bit scared. I thought maybe I need a bit more liquid fuel in the interplanetary transfer stage, so I did those extra fuel tanks there. Spoiler alert, I didn't. In fact, I added way too much deltaV to that interplanetary transfer vehicle. I think I must have just got confused, or had my deltaV value set up wrong in the vehicle assembly building. I'm not sure. But we had way more fuel than we needed. But, rather have too much than too few, or too little, Anyway, here I am time warping to an Eve, to a Kerbin to Eve transfer window. Basically draw a line from Kerbin to the sun to Eve. Eve needs to be about 55 degrees behind Kerbin. And just for realism's sake, we'll do a quick static fire test to make sure all is okay with the vehicle. Now, good stuff. A successful test, unlike SpaceX's recent mishap with Ship 36 exploding on the test pad at Massey's, an event I'm sure is familiar to everyone watching this video. After all, the story was covered by a massive range of news sources, with many from both the left, right and centre of the political spectrum, something we can see thanks to this coverage summation by Ground News, who have sponsored today's video. Ground News was founded by a former NASA engineer, and they strive to provide clarity in the media, breaking down each story by providing information on the reporting outlet's ownership, political biases, and factual accuracy of their sources. Looking back at that Starship Ship 36 explosion, we can see how wildly different reporting has been across the spectrum, with left-leaning outlets commenting on wildlife impacts in their headlines and the fact that this failure is just the latest in a string of others. Ground News' bias comparison tab quickly shows us that the center provided the basic facts about what happened and information about the Starship program itself, while the right put greater emphasis on the fact that SpaceX views failures as learning opportunities, while still acknowledging that this was the vehicle's 4th failure for 2025. I am a huge supporter of Ground News' mission to bring transparency to the media landscape and help you cut through sensationalism and bias, and they're subscriber funded to avoid bias themselves. If you want to back them too, then visit ground.news/MattLowne to get 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan for just $5 a month. This plan includes all the features mentioned and more. Thank you Ground News for sponsoring today's video. And for one last time, we are airborne once again. Jebediah Kerman, Bill Kerman and Bob Kerman there with their high-tech breaking ground spacesuits enjoying the ride, or at least Jebediah's enjoying the ride. Bill and Bob look a little bit more reserved, don't they? I mean, I gave them the launch escape tower, so they should be happy that I've, made them this nice, safe launch vehicle. As we power through, are the clouds going to come into view, or are we launching on a fairly cloudless day by the looks of things? And there's the sonic boom there as we go supersonic, or at least the VaporCone, as we go supersonic. And our solid rocket boosters are almost out of fuel, I can see, so we'll stage those. It's kind of a treacherous staging event, actually. Watch this. They don't. I really should have added some Separatrons. I thought I did add Separatrons, and then when I launched, I was like, oh, I didn't. But I guess it's like a Mandela effect, sort of like a micro Mandela effect, because it only affected me in the space of 10 minutes. But yeah, I could have sworn I added Separatrons. Anyway, it was all fine in the end, and as you can see, the first stage core has gone as well. So now it's time to launch our still massive upper stage. It's powered by 2 mainsail engines. One mainsail is usually enough to power an entire first stage core, hence why it's called mainsail. So yeah, that's just to give you a sense of scale of how big this thing is. And with the flame out of that second stage, we're still not in circular Kerbin orbit, although we do have an apoapsis above the atmosphere at this point. So now we're going to begin the treacherous, dangerous maneuver. So I guess maybe this wasn't the safest craft. Maybe this is why Bob and Bill were so worried, because they knew they'd have to do this sort of tricky maneuver. Not even in space yet. Quickly jetpacking over into the vehicle so that we can ditch the launch escape module and then stage the lower stage and circularize into a nice stable orbit. But we've not got long. You got less than 2 minutes to apoapsis, so had to do things fairly quickly. But as you can see, it was all fine in the end. So I thought about using the engines on this thing, but then I remembered, we could just activate the launch escape tower, and it just put us on a nice suborbital trajectory. So now in my head cannon, that thing will land robotically. It's not got a heat shield, but it doesn't need a heat shield from where it's re-entering from. It's got a probe core on board, so it will now descend, deploy its parachutes, and be recovered. That's not going to be the case in reality, though, because it's going to just despawn. But that was the idea anyway. And now we can circularize our vehicle. I'm going to go for an 80-kilometer apoapsis, and we'll circularize apoapsis, or periapsis is a similar height, because it's going to be a long old burn to Eve, and so it is going to force our periapsis down a little bit when we do that burn. So we need to have a bit of wiggle room so that the periapsis doesn't dip into Kerbin's atmosphere. And even then, we had to do the burn in 2 phases, because doing it in 1 phase, I think it worked out to be, looking at the screen, about 15-minute burn. It's way too long. We're going to just end up diving straight into Kerbin's atmosphere. So we'll split it in half, but first we're going to get our even counter. As you can see, we've got the even counter. So yeah, now we'll have to drag on retrograde and reduce it by about half. So it's about 1 kilometer per second of deltaV, that burn. So we'll reduce that to about 500 meters per second and do it that way. I remember this now, actually. I was having wishful thinking, like, maybe I'll be able to do the burn. Then I got to the burn indicator and I was like, we're basically pointing directly radial in. This is no good. So there we are, 577 meters per second for our first burn, and then again we'll make another maneuver plan at our periapsis to get our even counter once again. But yeah, really speeding the footage up here because this was a long old burn. We've only got 4 nuclear engines powering this very, very heavy vehicle. The Eve landers are always comically large compared to the interplanetary transfer vessels. There we are. We're going to make our second maneuver now. Hopefully we should get an even counter as easily as we got the first time. There we are, and it's actually happening a little bit sooner into our flight, so our flight time has been reduced a bit. Probably not that much comfort for Jeb, Bob and Bill, because it's going to be a very long old flight nonetheless. For missions like when we went to Elu and Duna, I added things like gravity rings and large habitats to keep them healthy, but Eve, we got to be very, very frugal here, so they're going to just have to make do on the Apollo-style command pod. So luckily, Kerbals, it's canon that they love being in space. That's all they want to do. They just want to get to space. Look at the planet Kerbin. It's literally only got like 4 buildings, and they're basically all dedicated to going to space. The other buildings are like ancient pyramids, and I think that might be it. I'm just trying to think. There's a UFO in the Antarctic, or the Arctic, I don't remember which one. But again, that's still kind of dedicated to going to space, and I guess it's not a Kerbal vessel, right? The idea is it was an alien because it's a UFO. So no, I don't think there are any other buildings on Kerbin that are not dedicated explicitly to going to space. So they love space, so they'll be fine. I'm just trying to justify giving them horrible living conditions. I gave them a book. I gave them a copy of The Martian by Andy Weir. It's a great story, about it's about being stranded and barely surviving on an alien planet, actually. So maybe it's not the best. Maybe it's not the best motivation, but either way, it should provide sufficient entertainment during the mission. As you can see, whilst I was waffling there, I plotted a mid-course correction burn so that our periapsis as we pass Eve is nice and close to its atmospheric border. And now we are doing said mid-course correction burn. So we'll cut to the map screen in just a second and have a look at where our orbital line takes us. Oh, look at that. Lovely and close. And we've got this nice horseshoe-shaped kind of flyby, which means our capture burn is going to be relatively cheap, 384.1 meters per second. Obviously, we kind of want to get into a low Eve orbit, but that's going to be considerably more expensive. So we'll separate the two vessels and have the lander just enter Eve's atmosphere from that eccentric orbit, and then the kind of interplanetary transfer stage that will later become the main ship will then just decelerate itself, and they'll be a bit more efficient that way. But here we are, rapidly approaching Eve SOI entry. There we are. Can we see the purple planet below us? Yes, we can. So now it's time to transfer down to perform our capture burn. Now, unfortunately, our periapsis is on the dark side of Eve, which means our Eve entry is going to be on the dark side of Eve, so there might not be much to see, but you know what I'll do is I'll just speed the footage up nice and fast so that it won't be too boring. For me, it was very, very tedious. You know what, I'll talk about this when we get to this point in the video, because I'm the worst at doing this, right, where I'll talk about something before it happens, and then it happens, and I'm just like sitting here twiddling my thumbs thinking, I already described in detail what I was doing here, so no, I will refrain from sharing any more information for now, and you know, make sure you like the video. Probably a bit late in the playthrough to say that now. And yeah, comment below if you have anything to add. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, now we are on a... now we've captured around Eve, basically. We're going to run some science experiments from space high above Eve. We can run the same experiments from space near to Eve as well, but we'll kind of do space high above Eve first. There we go. We've got our magnetometer all extended, and yeah, we can, you know, get all the experiments done, and then Bob Kerbin can restore them. Although, yep, there we are, restored as well. So yeah, we can run those experiments again from low Eve orbit. But now, it's time for the moment that we're all here for. It's time to begin the Eve landing. So first of all, we got Jebediah Kerbin and Bob Kerbin EVA'd across to the Gemini-style command pod. I know we can just transfer them internally, but like, for realism's sake, how are they going to transfer internally? So I felt it would be more appropriate to have them, you know, EVA pack their way across. And tragically, I'm so sorry, guys, I forgot to add EVA experiments again. So we can't do any EVA experiments on the surface of Eve. But you know what? It's fine. We don't need that much more science to unlock the rest of the tech tree. So, you know, kind of annoying that we couldn't do anything on the surface of Eve aside from, I guess, drive the rover around, so that was quite fun. But yeah, we couldn't do any of those experiments, so apologies for that. So now, I've extended our deorbit / lighting rig arms. So yeah, they're going to just extend like that so we can deorbit ourselves and not expend any of the fuel for our main Eve ascent stage. And there we are. We have a periapsis height of 65 kilometers, which I felt would be kind of, you know, safe, I hoped. And I'm quickly setting up some action groups now so that we can deploy our science experiments during entry. We've also got that little white experiment pod just there. It's kind of just below the left hand. I've just clicked it there. Basically, what that will allow us to do is collect all of the data, and then we can run it again. Obviously, that won't apply to the Science Junior and Mystery Goose, but like the thermometer and the barometer, etc., we can have them just automatically download their science to that white pod thing, and then they can be run again. We haven't got to go get a Kerbal out to reset them, so to speak. So here we are, approaching Eve atmospheric entry. So the atmosphere of Eve starts at 90 kilometers. So we are now in the atmosphere, and already we can see the heat of, well, I've cut to the map screen at a rather unhelpful point. Yeah, now we come back and it's like everything's on fire. But yeah, shout out to the Firefly mod, by the way. That's what's making my re-entry effects look absolutely beautiful. And already we've got some temperature gauges showing up on those heat shields. I'm playing at 100%, or, you know, aka default thermal re-entry strength. What's the setting? I don't know, you guys get it. And as you can see, it wasn't actually enough for us to end up on a suborbital trajectory. We're still, well, that's not the right word. We're not on a landing course. We're now ascending once again, and now we're back in space. So we already actually managed to lower our apoapsis with that pass through. So it'll be our second pass into the atmosphere that will actually capture and perform our landing, which gives us actually an opportunity to just gather the science from the science experiments, and, you know, that means that we have that extra redundancy layer, so that if we do lose the Science Junior, we don't end up losing any additional science, because we were able to gather the data and reset the experiment after we completed our first pass-through. As you can probably tell, I've switched to the interplanetary vessel, and Bill Kerbin can run the experiments and gather science from space low to Eve. We will need to have Bob back on board at some point so he can restore those science experiments so we can run them when we get to Gilly. But, you know, we got time. So yeah, now it's time to time warp around and have another go at landing on Eve. So here we are. Time warping around. Oh, very scary stuff. We got those air brakes as well. They're just to help with stability mainly. They are very, very weak when it comes to withstanding re-entry heating though, so I guess I was about to say correct myself, but I guess this is technically Eve re-entry now, isn't it? I always do this. I always call it re-entry when I'm going to somewhere like Juna or Eve or somewhere like that, or Lathe. Even though it's not technically re-entry because we didn't start from here, so we're not re-entering, we're entering. But now I guess it is re-entry because we've already entered Eve's atmosphere more than once this mission. So there we are. Temperature gauge going there, and as you can see, our wrap-up is height from the top left. It's now well below the atmospheric border, so we're not going back to space this time, or at least we will be going back to space with engine power, but not, you know what I mean now, do you guys? Like, this has been a long, old, kind of the same thing for me to narrate over for a while, so forgive me if I'm struggling a bit. Oh, starting to lose it a little bit there. Oh, but it was all fine. It was all fine. We're through the dangerous part of the atmosphere, but now it's time to form a very dangerous heat shield separation. So I'm not going to say anything, you can just watch. And damage report, all looks to be okay. So I'm not going to detach the lower heat shield for a couple of reasons. Firstly, if I detach it now, it's just going to slam up and hit the lander and probably destroy something. But also, we kind of want to maintain as much drag as possible, because if we were to hypothetically not have that lower heat shield, there's a chance we'd start falling too fast and the parachutes would rip off and get destroyed by kind of atmospheric forces. That's why I've made 2 of the parachutes deploy super early, so we're going as slow as possible. Now we're going nice and slowly, 13.2 meters per second. We can detach that lower shield to be fine. I've also got the kind of engine arms deployed there, so we've got those lights shining there, and also it induces a bit more drag on the lander. Now I looked below us and noticed that it looks like the heat shield has actually survived the landing, so I started panicking, trying to steer ourselves clear of it with the air brakes, but then it started glitching out and it's just flown away. You can sort of see it. You'll see it for a bit throughout this mission. You'll see that heat shield just like flying around. Now, as you can see, the footage is going very fast for you guys, but it didn't go very fast for me. I didn't dare use physics time warp for this because I didn't want the parachutes to get destroyed, so I let it all play out in real time. And here is the landing. And we have touchdown, but we're on a bit of a slope here. And as you can see, the lander is sliding, which is one thing I hate about KSP. But I added some grip pads to the base of the rocket. So I very, very nervously started retracting the landing gear sequentially in my hopes that it would sort of fall backwards a little bit and come to rest on the grip pads. So here we are, just very, very carefully. Oh, it's got a bit of a grip there. Should we retract one more? We have come to a... Look at the heat shield in the background there. We have come to a stop. So there we are. Pro tip. The grip pads are great. Use grip pads. It's a real shame the landing legs can't just, have the same level of grip, but whatever. Maybe, one day. There are actually mods, to be fair, that add like stock equivalent landing gear. They look exactly the same, but they have grippiness, so you don't slide around on things, but whatever. We're running our science experiments just then. You might have missed it because I was speeding the footage up really, really fast, but we did run our science experiments just before we landed from the lower atmosphere. So now Bob Kerbin can go out and collect it all. So, do an EVA report as well. Well, I say collect it all. It's all inside that little white science, brick there. Is it the experiment storage bay? I don't know. Science brick is a better name, isn't it? And there we are. And as you can see, the ladders all worked. So that's good because jetpacks do not work on Eve. So we will need the ladders to get back on board the lander. But as you can see, that ladder there, the base, the bottom ladder, it's quite high because we're on a slope. So there was a bit of an issue with that. But don't worry, we were all fine. We didn't need to use cheats or anything. But yeah, Jebediah Kerbin there, stealing the spotlight from Bob Kerbin and taking the science for himself. I mean, it's fine, right? It's a team effort. It's not like we're going to be deprived of any science, but That's Bob's job, Jebediah. You're the pilot. You've got to do the Eve ascent. I mean, I did everything, but like in the reality of this universe, Jebediah is the crack Kerbinaut that's going to pilot us to Eve orbit again. So yep, we can plant our Lowne Aerospace flag for one of the final times. Obviously, we're still going to go to Gilly after Eve, but yeah, we are approaching the end of our missions. I mean, in reality, we would carry on like playing through, but like I'm ending the playthrough at the end of this mission because we've done the tech tree, so we've technically beaten the game, and we'll have beaten the final boss, right? Eve is the final boss of Kerbal Space Program. And yeah, one of the moves of this boss is that, yeah, we can't reach the ladder. I mean, Jebediah, come on, you can. Like, look, he can reach his arms out and grab onto it. But yeah, we couldn't reach the ladder. So I was like, oh no. So I got Bob Kerbin to plant another Lowne Aerospace flag here. And yeah, pro tip, Kerbals can actually climb flagpoles. So yeah, can we get back on board by sort of climbing the flagpole? Let's have a look. I mean, the game graciously rotated the lander slightly. It sort of slid a little bit and aligned the ladder up almost perfectly with the flag. And as you can see, Bob Kerbin was able to climb aboard the lander very, very, very slowly. I'm going to speed the footage up for you guys. Yeah, it's quite painful to do this in real time. In fact, even the sped up footage, it's still kind of tedious. You're watching this back at 4 times regular speed. I guess I could have tried using physics time warp, but again, I daren't do that, especially because of how like glitchily it's resting on its grip pads, this rocket. I didn't want to risk reloading a quick save and it just exploded upon, physics easing. So yeah, now we got Bob coming back on board, we can deploy our rover. And it sort of fired itself away from the lander because I forgot that by deploying the lander's landing gear, it would have also extended the rover's wheels, which I didn't want to do because that would have meant they were kind of clipping into those fuel tanks. The idea was the rover would have just fallen down and then we could deploy its wheels and it would have deployed much more safely. But I guess it was all fine. I couldn't be bothered to climb down the ladder, so I decided to parachute down, which was, I guess, a bit of a mistake. Bob Kerbin almost completely spaghettied just then. But it was fine. Look at that lander there, standing there intimidatingly. Is that a word? It doesn't even sound like a real word, does it? It's getting late. What can I say? We're so far into the playthrough at this point. So yes, we can board the rover, and Jebediah Kerbin can board the rover as well. Now, one thing I really should have done, in addition to bringing EVA science, was bring EVA repair kits in case we have an issue with the rover's wheels. But I was like, it's fine, we're just going to drive to a point of interest and deploy its scanning arm and scan it, so we won't need to drive very far. But I was just looking around here, and I couldn't really see any points of interest, so the Breaking Ground DLC adds points of interest on the surfaces of planets and moons, and you can scan them with the little rover arms. But I couldn't really find any. I don't know if that's just because they're sort of blending in with the stones that have been added by the Parallax Continued mod. But yeah, and then, we flipped out of control. And I was like, oh no. And as you can see, those two starboard wheels are broken now. So I didn't notice at the time. So I was like, oh, no worries. We'll just get Bob Kerbin to kind of go out on EVA and right the rover. And we can, carry on our merry way. It took a while to switch to the right object. So here we go. Why am I taking so long to do this? There we are. So Bob coming there. We can now push through and it was all fine. And we can get it back on board and then, the parachute. The parachute triggered just then. And we can deploy the wheels and set off. But as you can see, it no longer works, basically. So that was a shame. So it was a nice idea bringing the rover. If you are a Patreon or YouTube member and download this craft file, then I would probably suggest that you add some EVA repair kits, or just don't bother, right? I mean, rovers have never really worked that well in Kerbal Space Program. Now, we can just run back to the lander from here because they're not that far away. I, frankly, couldn't be bothered, and I was like, well, it's fine. The Kerbals can run there. Look how quick it would have been. But I don't know. I can't be bothered. So I was a bit naughty, guys. I used Vessel Mover just to teleport us a bit closer, just so I didn't have to sit with the tedium of having to run back. Don't forget, I had to sit and watch this thing re-enter the atmosphere and land in real time. It took ages. And I always get a bit anxious when missions to Eve take a long time, because obviously there's a chance the Kraken might destroy the craft, and then quick saving and quick loading doesn't work because the craft explodes on respawn, or I might have made some critical blunder during the build and it doesn't end up being able to make it to Eve orbit. Like when I build Eve landers, I do test them, so I just teleport them to the surface of Eve. In the case of this one, I teleported it to a point at Eve sea level, like on the coastline, to make sure it can reach orbit from the coasts, aka sea level, and it worked. But yeah, there's always a chance, I don't know. So yeah, really glitchily trying to, like, yeah, you can see how much of a struggle it was to get Bob Kerbin onto the ladder just here, but we eventually did it. He's kind of crab walking up it, isn't he? And then we can just speed up the footage. Well, it's sped up as much as I really can whilst we do the climb here. And yeah, that's basically the EVA of Eve, the Eve EVA. So there we are. We're getting on board, and both Kerbals are back on board the Gemini style command pod. So now it's time to start thinking about the most tricky part of this mission. But first of all, we're going to gradually start detaching things, and hopefully they won't destroy some critical aspect of the lander. Oh, all seems fine. Let's do the next one. Oh, yeah, we can just retract those air brakes as well. Again, all seems okay. Visual inspection, all looks alright, so just gotta ditch the little science brick now. And yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll deploy the rest once we are airborne. They can just like get fired into the surface. So just doing one final little quick stage check, and then we can we'll have to launch at the night time, I'm afraid, because we want to be launching at a point where we can rendezvous with the mothership. So let's have a look. We can just time warp, completely ignoring the mothership. We just want the lander to be kind of underneath the mothership's periapsis. So here we are, rapidly approaching that. There we are. And so with that all done, it's time, guys, to perform Eve Liftoff. Now, unlike asparagus staging with the fuel lines, the aerospike engines won't stop burning once their respective fuel tanks are out of fuel, because of the way the fuel flow priority works. It still supplies everything with fuel, it's just the tanks, it's not concerned with the engines. So I'm having to right-click the tanks, and then when they're empty, that's how I know when to stage. Look at that! We're not even 10 kilometers up yet, and already we've nearly burned all of our peripheral stages. There we are. And now we've expanded those ones. You'll see how rapidly our velocity starts increasing. So I've actually throttled down to, is that 1, 2, 2/3 full throttle just there. And just like, you know, descent, during ascent, Eve's deadly atmosphere is going to be an issue when it comes to the effects of thermal heating. Look at those temperature gauges showing up. So it's really about striking a balance between trying to get through the thickest parts of the atmosphere nice and quickly with our powerful stage, whilst also not going too quickly so we burn up. And there we are, we have an apoapsis of 105. So yeah, we are suborbital with just our first stage. Well, first stage core, right? I know we had peripheral engines supplying it. And there we are, we're going to start burning basically flat now, because all I care about is raising our perigee, because our apoapsis is fine. So yeah, doing a Lyson, but look how much deltaV is in this stage. It's such an efficient engine, that cheetah engine. And you've got kind of a porcupine-looking lander just there with the remnants of those decouplers that, you know, held onto the ladders, the Science Juniors, the Science Brick, and the heat shields as well. And yeah, there we are. So I've made a maneuver node. As you can see, we can all finally breathe a sigh of relief. Well, I guess we can't quite breathe a sigh of relief just yet, but the numbers are all fine. We have the thrust weight ratio, and we have the deltaV required to perform a safe circularization. I quickly ditched the nose cone just there so we don't leave it as debris left in space, and we can deploy our little stashed solar panels so that we remain fully charged whilst we wait for a rendezvous point with the mothership. And there we are! Now we can breathe a sigh of relief. We have a circular low Eve orbit, and thus the final boss of Kerbal's space program hath been felled. I mean, we've still got to kind of get back to Kerbin, but you know, we've done the hardest parts of the mission, I think. And well, for me personally, the hardest part is designing the lander in the first place. But then doing the mission is also pretty tricky, I think. So yeah, now I'm just going to do a series of, you know, time warps and burns to get ourselves on a nice, you know, encounter with the mothership. As you can see, we have loads of deltaV remaining because, again, this was designed to be able to launch from sea level. And for this mission, we didn't actually launch from there. Now, there's going to be a few flashing lights in a second, guys. So if you do suffer from photosensitive epilepsy, close your eyes now. When this sound that's playing now ends, that means it's safe to open your eyes again. But yeah, I time warped in low EVE orbit, and it was very light. There was lots of flashing lights, so I probably should put a little warning just there. But yeah, that's all done, so you can open your eyes again now if you didn't catch the end of that little note just there. And yeah, we performed our last burn that's going to get us kind of on a nice close encounter with our mothership. As you can see, our relative speed is going to be very high, and we don't have much deltaV remaining in this lander, so we have to do the burn using the mothership, which still doesn't have great thrust-to-weight ratio because, you know, it's only got 4 nuclear engines. Look at the deltaV as well. As I said earlier, guys, I did massively over-engineer this. It's got 6.5 kilometers of deltaV remaining, so yeah, way too much fuel basically, and it means that our burn to match our target speed is going to be very long, so we're not actually going to get a close encounter at that particular encounter node. So I'm going to do a couple more corrective burns to get nice and close to the target. Now, I did make a little bit of a blunder actually here with the design of the vessel. I tested most things with the vehicle, but I didn't test everything. I thought, it'll be alright on the night, I don't need to test this. Turned out I did. So basically, we have a junior-sized docking port at the back of the ship, and that's what the lander can go to dock to, and then Jeb and Bob can just EVA around and get back on board the mothership. And then the plan was for then the interplanetary transfer vehicle would go to its apoapsis, drop its perigee into the atmosphere of Eve, where we can then detach what remains of the lander and the kind of forward fairing and all that, and have them be destroyed in Eve's atmosphere. But well, again, I did this earlier, didn't I? I said I talk about things before they happen, and then when it happens, I've got nothing to say. So, well, there you go. That's just some foreshadowing of an issue that I ran into. Let us watch the video now and see the target appear. Oh, got a lovely little glimpse of that satellite network that we set up a couple of missions ago. Was it last mission? It was last mission, wasn't it? And yeah, there's the target coming into view there. So, relative speed nice and low, under 20 meters per second, and only 300 meter separation. So nice and close. From now on, we can just do the lazy way of reaching the target, where we just keep on pointing towards it, burn for a bit, then burn retrograde, then burn towards the target, etc. until we're there, basically. So yeah, now we can just time warp there, and it's rapidly coming into view. I'm going to give Jeb and Bob a nice little engine wash with our nuclear engines. I mean, they've probably already been exposed to horrendous levels of radiation on the surface of Eve. Kerbals, you know, they're built different. Like, people build bases in Joule, like, floating in the air, which would, Jupiter is very, very dangerous for a human to be near in real life because it's so radioactive. But, that's what I mean. Kerbals, they're just built different, I guess. That, or they just have amazing lead-lined suits. I don't know. I don't know how the glass could be lead-lined, but, well, can you get leaded glass? I don't know. I don't care to pause and Google things. Anyway, this is where I mentioned I made a bit of a blunder just here. So everything is now docked together. Now we can point retrograde, making sure we're controlling from the Apollo-style command pod. And, well, we'll do a retrograde burn from apoapsis. As you can see, our orbital velocity is 1,422 meters per second. And that's not changing. I'm guessing that the Eve lander, or what remains of it, is blocking the engines from being able to provide thrust, which is very annoying. So we can't actually decelerate and ditch the lander. So I was like, oh no, we're going to have to just leave it in like eccentric Eve orbit. So I don't know. I feel like, is this really my fault? I feel like in reality it wouldn't matter. Like the engines would, yes, probably destroy like critical structural parts of the lander, but it doesn't matter because we just want to get rid of it, right? So it doesn't really matter if it gets destroyed by the engine wash. So yeah, kind of a shame. So we left it. We still ditched the forward kind of fairing piece and let that deorbit, but yeah, we're not going to be able to deorbit the lander on this occasion. Oh, how frustrating. I mean, again, it wasn't really my fault, right? So I feel like I wouldn't lose too much sleep if I just terminated it in the tracking station. Whatever, I guess you guys will have to be the judge of that in the comment section down below. So now you can see I'm raising my apoapsis to intercept with Gilly's orbit. Gilly is a tricky old one to reach because a couple of reasons. A, it has tiny, tiny surface gravity, so getting an encounter with it is more like docking with a spacecraft rather than reaching a planet or moon because its sphere of influence and gravity well is so low that getting encounters with it is like pinpoint precision. The other thing that makes it difficult to visit, as you can probably tell, is that it's on a very high and very eccentric orbit, so kind of needs big burns to reach despite its small size. So there we are. I've put our orbit to intercept Gillies. Now I'm just going to play around with Maneuver Node Maker, try and get a nice close Gilly encounter, which we can. So there we are. Lovely, lovely stuff. This might seem like an inefficient way of reaching Gilly, but again, Gilly's surface gravity is so low that the O-berth effect may as well not exist, so kind of sort of matching your orbit around Eve to Gilly's and then getting the encounter from there, it's basically just as efficient. So there we are, we have our Gilly encounter just there. As you can see, look how short that line is. That gives you an idea of just how tiny Gilly's sphere of influence is. And again, once you get the circular orbit, it takes literally a tiny, tiny amount of deltaV to actually not only deorbit ourselves, put us on a basically vertical descent down to the surface, and there it is, looking like a little old potato down there. So there's our capture burn there. I thought about capturing, but I thought let's just go straight for the collision, as in like a landing trajectory. Again, look at that. What's our orbital speed? Our orbital speed is 0.9 meters per second. I mean, I guess we are descending directly down, but you get it right. So now we're going to get Bob coming to quickly go and restore the Mystery Goo and the Science Junior so that we can run them from space high above Gilly and space low to Gilly. I really hope at no point in this commentary I said the word Ike instead of Gilly, because I don't know, for whatever reason, I was just thinking of Ike throughout this mission. Like when I planted the flag, I must admit, guys, I sort of cut the footage because I was too embarrassed, but now I'm telling you, so whatever. I wrote, we've landed on Ike, and then I left. It was only after I was editing the footage, I was like, why did I call it Ike? But now Ike is in my head, and so if I ever call it Ike, or if I've called it Ike throughout this mission, then yeah, I apologize. I do know I'm not stupid, I hope. Yeah, that was another little weird blunder I made. I guess I was just going a little bit cuckoo crazy because I'd just done, you know, the Eve mission, which was very stressful. So yeah, there's a reason why I don't really go to Eve very often, even though I'm a semi-professional player of this game, because Eve, it is just a frustrating old place to go to because the engines in Kerbal Space Program are not optimized for it. They're optimized for Kerbin. So yeah, I would like to have a go at some sort of Eve rotorcraft, so one that uses propellers, to raise the craft kind of high enough up in the atmosphere and I can deploy an engine. I know Jamie Logan Aerospace, very underrated channel by the way, go check that out, has done a Eve lander that uses like helicopter blades. That was really, really small and efficient. So it is something I'd like to do at some point, but you know, I've not done that for this mission. I mean, there's something so viscerally cool about a rocket, right? A little helicopter, I don't know, doesn't compare. I don't know. Anyway, here we are coming down for a nice gentle descent. We've run our science experiments from space low to Gilly. So now we're going to wait until we've landed. So have a look at the top right where it says situation with the Kerbal Engineer readout. We want that to say landed. So are you ready? It still says in space low. In space low, landed in space low. We did a little bounce, as you can see. Gilly's surface gravity is very low. Landed, and it stayed landed. So like, right, let's run our experiments here. And then now that's all done, it's fine. Doesn't matter if the lander drifts back into space low because we've done all the science we need to do from the lander itself. But of course, Bob Kerbin still needs to go down, gather a surface sample, and for real this time, plant the final Lowne Aerospace III, the third one flag, on the surface of Gilly. And there we go. We raise a glass. Beautiful. And I definitely didn't call the flag plant site Ike. So how's Bob going to celebrate? Whoa! He did a well cool front flip. Front flip to jetpack maneuver straight into the mothership. Well, I guess just the ship now at this point. Ignoring the fact that there's still the lander can orbiting Eve. And there we are. Now it's time to head on back home. So we're just going to go straight up, circularize and then exit Gilly's sphere of influence. To make things easier as well, I'm going to circularize around Eve, like in a sort of medium, well, high, medium orbit around Eve, and we'll just plot a maneuver node from there. I did not care to be efficient because look how much delta, we got over 4 kilometers per second of delta V remaining. So yeah, we didn't need to be efficient whatsoever here. So if I were to be efficient, if this were to hypothetically be a tutorial, you might say, what you'd want to do is drop your periapsis to be nice and close to Eve, and then perform your burn from Eve to Kerbin as close to periapsis as possible to make the most of the O-berth effect. Because we got so much fuel, it didn't really matter. So just for ease of simplicity, and you know, when it comes to plotting the maneuver node, I just circularized from here, and I was like, fine, we will do our burn from this height here. So yeah, we'll set Kerbin as our target. And basically just try and force an encounter really inefficiently, but yeah, so we've got to do a little bit of a mid-course correction burn just there, but there we are, a lovely Kerbin encounter. Nice. So yeah, we'll just perform our escape burn. So yeah, it's 1,221, I think it was, meters per second of deltaV. If we were close to Eve's periapsis, it would be much, much lower than that. But again, we don't need to be efficient. But just in case you need to be efficient, then that's what you do. And that's my story. That's my tutorial, the tutorial section of my Eve mission. I have done a dedicated Eve tutorial if anyone is interested. If you just like search on YouTube, Matt Lowne Eve tutorial should come up. But yeah, so there's our mid-course correction maneuver plan plotted. We're just going to fine-tune it now. So we're going to enter Kerbin's sphere of influence. Now we're going to be coming in fairly fast, but it's not going to be a problem because we are using an ablative heat shield. And as I've mentioned many times throughout this playthrough, the ablative heat shield is very, very, very overpowered. Like it's basically indestructible. Like it's not completely indestructible, but I don't think I've ever really had a situation where the ablative heat shield was completely destroyed. I think the only times I've had to double up ablative heat shields was for small landers descending in, well, say landers, like science bombs going down into Joule, because Joule is like very, very harsh, but I feel like that's understandable, right? Other than that, I've never had an issue with the ablative heat shields. So there we are, 27 kilometer periapsis seemed safe. I think I did try and play around with that a little bit by putting ourselves normal, disabling SAS, enabling RCS, and using the little RCS thrusters on the command pod, but I couldn't really get any better than 27. Either it would be too low or too high, so 27 it is. As we, it seems the game has renamed our Eve ship to Eve ship ship. I think obviously when the vessel was split, one became Eve ship lander, one became Eve ship ship. Don't know. Anyway, where is Kerbal? I can just hit there. That little blue marble appearing before us. How long are we on? 404 days. Oh, we got a little cheeky mum encounter just there. Jebediah, Bob, and Bill finally can make it home for the last time. So there we are. We're going to do another danger re-entry. Look at those fireworks showing up. I don't like talking too much because it's just funny just watching everything explode, but yeah, that's pretty much all the big explosions done now, isn't it? And there is Kerbin going forward. It'd be nice to get a splashdown, right, because that's kind of more akin to Apollo. And in fact, there was a plan for Apollo to go to Venus, which is obviously the real-life analog of Eve. I've done a recreation of the the Venus Apollo missions for going to Eve. That was in KSP2 though, so I guess my KSP2 videos get no views anymore because why? But you know, it's kind of the same sort of game engine, so if you want to check that out, then by all means you can search that up. But there we are. We've got a lovely kind of view of the sun just there, casting those lovely golden rays over the ocean as we come down for our final landing / splashdown. Yeah, it's a beautiful sight. It's a beautiful sight, but you know what would be even more beautiful? Seeing how much science we unlocked from this mission. So let's go ahead and recover the vessel and have a look. Whoa, nearly 7,000 science. So loads to play around with and more than enough to complete the tech tree. Let's just tidy up the launch pad quickly and have a look. So unlike before where I've talked about what I'm choosing, I'm just clicking everything blindly and just unlocking everything because that's what we need to do at this stage. And there we are. The Rapier engine hath been unlocked and the tech tree has been conquered. And so brings an end to this Lowne Aerospace 3, the third one. I very much hope you enjoyed the journey. But there is going to be one more episode. I've been editing these videos concurrently, and I've been gradually combining them into one giant video playthrough where it's all completely seamless. I've been redoing bits of commentary to make it all make sense, so it should work as one sole video. So I hope you look forward to that. In the meantime, massive thank you to the names on screen, my Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members who make all of this content possible. And again, if you're one of those names, then you can download this video's craft file from your exclusive ad-free version of this video. But yeah, that is the end of this video and Lowne Aerospace 3, the third one. So once again, I very much hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.